Hi everyone. The Week 5 module focuses on talking online, on discussion forums, and working with students so that they are having conversation and learning through that online. So let's take a look at a few of the highlights and what we are looking for from students and how we can set up learning experiences that really work for them. So one of the key things is to define a purpose for discussion forums. There's a lot of things we can have students do in online spaces, and having conversation is a real huge learning tool, just like it is in the regular classroom. But we've got to have a purpose for doing this. So defining that sense of purpose, do you want students to share information? Do you want them to have true, real, genuine conversation with sort of an unknown direction? Do you want them to interact with a text, or do you want them to build common knowledge? There are probably other reasons to have online conversation, but those are some of the key ones. It's important that you set expectations and you create guidelines, not only for how much and how they should participate, but also how their language should be and what's okay to do online, what can get missed. As much as I hate emojis, they work great in online learning and they solve a lot of hurt feelings. So things like that can really help students understand what they're doing. It is also key to avoid predictable patterns where really you're not asking people to have discussions, but the typical read and respond. Do this reading, answer this question. It can get really flat really fast, and students will see right through that, and you'll lose the whole purpose of conversation, which is kind of to discover new things and explore new fields, all that kind of stuff. It is important to build kind of a basis so that from the start, when you have the first conversation with students, whether they are kindergarten students or they are college students, to have some kind of an expectation for what you're looking for and what for them is success. That takes us to expectations, and it is really key for conversations to have a reason to exist. If you're having an online discussion with students just because you want to put a grade in, well, then they're not really having a conversation. You're having them either jump through a hoop or you're having them um, just turn in a paper. Those are different things. You can ask students to talk on multiple days over the course of a week or a month or a project or even an afternoon, or have a discussion in just a single one-time entry. It's also key to know what tools you're using for this. Maybe for a discussion, a forum like we're using in Moodle works great for your purpose. Maybe it's the worst possible thing you could do. Some people totally hate having these kinds of conversations. And sometimes you want people to be able to really walk away and spend big time and reflect. So maybe journals or weblogs or wikis work better. It's also key for you to track down the students who are missing, the people who might be latecomers to a conversation, the people who might just kind of slap something in and not really show, or the people who are kind of lurking and seeing what people are posting but not really getting down to it themselves. That is a key thing for keeping conversations vibrant and keeping people participating. Having a presence in a conversation can be key, it can be super necessary, and at times it's totally unnecessary. There's a lot of different roles and a lot of different ways of having a presence. You can be an active instructor, popping in and out of the forums, um, leaving little additions to the conversation all the time. But you don't want to be domineering, and you don't want to reply to every single comment every single time, or you'll find that students are waiting for your response before they move on. It is really helpful to deal with private issues on the side, in even a personal message or an email or something, or a phone call or a sidebar conversation. I have seen online conversations where students have been called out by their instructor, and it has shut down forums and totally changed dynamics. So just like you would in a face-to-face class, doing that stuff on the side is great. You can find that students rise to become critics of other students, and while sometimes student feedback is helpful, sometimes student critics can almost be a form of bullying. It can totally shut down people's conversation, and it can create these artificial leaders who think they're leading a conversation, but really they are just keeping other people from being full participants. So keeping an eye on what students are saying and how students are active is helpful. It is really helpful to be in a conversation and to quote a student's words. To say, well, I agree with what John said when he said, and then repeating what they said. It's really honoring for a student to know that they've been listened to and they've been heard and they've even been repeated. And lastly, it's really key to kind of show what you want. If you leave really quick, nice jobs, you have to be careful to see that other people are not emulating what you're doing. Likewise, if you are using very casual language or even things like sloppy writing, it can be very hard to rein in other sloppy writers. So it's key to model what you're looking for. There are a lot of styles of online conversation, and let me run through just a few. One is, and these, I'm not saying these are good or bad, these all work for different purposes. But one style, the instructor leads, puts out a prompt, students respond. Another style, very similar, the instructor leads, the students respond, and they engage others. So the students aren't just answering the teacher, they're now talking to each other. A third, the students lead the conversation and they respond to each other. When this course runs, in the past, it's been a few times that I've done this, I've had individual students run the conversation. And when I've worked with high school students, I've often used conversation forums sort of like kind of like a dry run for people to try out different roles in the class. And so I've had student discussion leaders, and all depending on the students, that's worked great. You can create different discussion forums and make them semi-autonomous, much like you would a literary circle, where you would have students breaking up and taking different actions, different roles around a text. That can be hugely helpful. It is next to impossible with very young children because that won't work, as you folks with young children in your classrooms may know. And it can also be very bad in some high school settings when kids can't get the focus together. But it can also lead to rich, really dynamic conversation with the right setting. And lastly, you can set up conversation forums, discussion forums that have an end focus. So in next week's work, we'll be talking about connected learning and learning that happens totally outside our classrooms. You can set up a project-based team, and that discussion forum can decide what the team is going to do. So that's where it's results-driven. The conversation's goal is to solve a problem or create a solution, and that's the focus. It is really key to be a coach in any kind of conversations. You'll have students coming in, excuse me, who are very much afraid of putting their thoughts out in public. And so you'll have to work with some students, maybe totally invisibly to everyone else, to help them kind of avoid the fear of being out there. Frequently, I have students who ask, can I just send it to you, because I'm really not, super about my writing. And sometimes it takes, yeah, you know what, send me your first one and let's see how that goes. And so you really quickly have to get them in the swing of things. You can have students as discussion guides or leaders, and that is really great to do with a little training so that they sort of see your style and kind of take that on. That works great. Without that training, those discussion leaders as students can go either way. It can be great or it can just be really challenging because you can have people who are dominating. You have to watch the people who are one-timers, the quota meters. If you say, I need you to post 3 times in the week, you'll have people who will open the forum, post a thought, open it again in an hour, post again, and the third thing. And they haven't advanced the conversation, but they've just checked off the box. Likewise, people will post early in a conversation and never return. And that's like having a roundtable conversation, saying your piece, and walking out the door. That's not what conversations do, and you want to keep that from happening. You've got to set the tone. I know I said that one earlier, but it's kind of key when you're using online conversations in so many ways, and really help model the style you're looking for. So go into it deliberately. Go into these conversations knowing what you're looking for and why, and stay active and shape them to make them happen.